This is a book haul that brings together a multiple series of different threads across the booktube community. So, to begin with, I bought this earlier today. There he is, Sean Connery. Not quite the same as the SNL. Presumably, we have the music down here, and well, yeah, not quite Prohibition era, but anyway. So this is, because you might not be able to see that, is Thunderball. So this is from the Penguin Modern Classic series. And yeah, that means that this book was first published in 1961. And this one is 2004? Yeah, 2004. It's originally published by Jonathan Cape Limited, but the copyright went to Glid Rose Publications in 1961 for some reason. So, yeah, the classic Ian Fleming, James Bond novel, an early one. The first of them was Casino Royale. I seem to remember reading that, or reading some of it. So when I saw this, I thought, hey, I'm gonna. I never read it as a lad or anything. I think my brother did. He had everything. He had all the Ian Fleming novels. I think he probably read most of them. I never read any of them. I was busy with The Hobbit and The Lord of the Rings, something like that. Anyway, and yeah, but yeah, Casino Royale was 1953, and Live and Let Die was the next one from 1954, and then Moonraker. And then Diamonds Are Forever. So that's 53, 4, 5, and 6. And From Russia with Love was 57. So Thunderball wasn't until 1961. So anyway, that's a Penguin Modern Classics version of it. And yeah, Sean Connery. So there's that one. There's a bit of a change. This is another thread from somewhere else. And this is kind of eventually, at last, so to speak, for me, getting hold of Anne Frank's diary. Again, I picked this up today. Yeah, very pleased. 50 pence, so I can't complain. And yeah, straight away, the various certain things that are relevant to it and suddenly come to the fore, as it were. Obviously, they are the diary of Anne Frank, obviously, but she kind of I don't know whether she's a sort of 13, 14, 15-year-old gal, lass. She's decided to sort of have her memoirs. She's written it as a letter, a bit like a letter to someone else. And I'm not going to tell you. So if you pick up a copy, you'll obviously instantly realize how moving that is, or how meaningful it is, rather. So, yeah. There's an interesting poem called Anne Frank Hughes in this version. This is a Routledge Longman version, something. Yeah. And it has several pages of really quite interesting introductory remarks. And there's a quote from George Eliot's Daniel Deronda. And it says, there comes a terrible moment to many souls when the great movements of the world, the larger destinies of mankind, which have lain aloof in newspapers, enter like an earthquake into their own lives. So that obviously reminds me of Historathon, and but also in literature, reading War and Peace by Tolstoy. There are a number of black and white. They're only black and white, but kind of like, I don't know whether that is going to mean anything to you, but the Franks and their story is actually very interesting. They hid in Amsterdam, and that, I think, was the picture of the secret entrance to an annex in Amsterdam in a series of buildings where they hid during the war. Some of it, anyway. And it's behind a bookcase. There's a false bookcase that reveals an entranceway into the secret annex. So yeah, I've been meaning to. It's one of those things that I really ought to just have a look at this. I really ought to have a read of the Diary of Anne Frank. And I don't know whether it's patience or forgetfulness or a lack of something. I don't think so. No, I don't think so. But it is certainly one of those ones, that as far as I know, anyway, we should just have a look at and see what she says and what it's all about, kind of thing. Bucket list, I think they call it, isn't it? Yeah, something like that. So there's that one. The other one that also came through the post today is that. I don't know whether The Anglo-Saxon World, an Anthology, including the complete Beowulf, translated by Crosley Holland. And this is obviously the Oxford World Classics version. So there are practically a little over 300 pages. And yeah, there's some interesting things that they say at the beginning. 900 years separate the decline and fall of the Roman Empire from the birth of the Renaissance. The most sophisticated European culture during these centuries was that of the Anglo-Saxons, the descendants of the Germanic tribesmen who swarmed into England during the 5th and 6th centuries, swept aside the existing Romano-British peoples, and divided the country into 7 great kingdoms. Of all the superb bodies of literature surviving from these centuries, including Icelandic sagas and Eddaic and so on and so forth, the Anglo-Saxon is the most many-sided and magnificent. Through poems, heroic, religious, elegiac, through the letters of kings and bishops, through laconic chronicles, that is, kind of short, terse chronicles, travelogues, and herbal prescriptions. And through voices renowned, including a fellow called Cadmon and Elfric, and others, we come face to face with the remarkable people who have given to the English the basis of their language, the lie of their land, and many of their most deeply embedded characteristics. So as the contents page is very good because it allows you to kind of dip in and out of things. Most of the Abstracts are very short indeed. So, for instance, there's the wanderer, the seafarer, the husband's message, wolf, the ruin, etc. These are just short pages, 50 to 53, 53 to 56, and such like. But kind of meandering through, I came across a thing called a manumission on page 262. Manumission. Geetflidder has given a freedom for the love of God and for the need of her soul, namely Eckerd and the smith and Elfstan and his wife and all their offspring, born and unborn, and Arkil and Kol and Eckfrith and Ildun's daughter, and all those people whose heads she took for their food in the evil days. Whosoever perverts this and robs her soul of this, may God Almighty rob him of his life and of the heavenly kingdom, and may he be accursed, dead and alive, ever into eternity. And also she has freed the men whom she begged from Kespadric, namely Elfwald and Colbrand and Elfsig and his son Gamal and Elthrared and Trederwood and his stepson Uhtred, Akulf and Thurkill and Elfsig. Whoever deprives them of this, may God Almighty and Saint Cuthbert be angry with them. The Oxford World Classic, latest version of the Anglo-Saxon World, an anthology. I think it's pretty self-explanatory. I think it's probably, if you're interested, it's got to be, like an anthology. It's all original source material, including Beowulf. There we are. Okay, and another one that I bought very recently, also brand new, for some reason. I'm kind of supposing I'm just not going to come across it secondhand, but the front cover I thought was just kind of perfect in a way. The Book of Margery Kempe, and this is a new translation by some guy called Anthony Bale. And it just looks terrific. It's really just something that is a little work of art kind of thing, in a way. And the front cover is Anne Oggard from a 15th century stained glass window from Long Melford Church in Suffolk, in England. And Margery Kempe, if what you know about Margery Kempe is basically to do with Margery Kempe and her religion, her Christianity, and the like, at least the first set of pages is Margery Kempe, the not very Christian, and the not very religious at all. And really the Margery Kempe is really rather quite well to do. And what that actually means for someone born probably around about 1373 from the town of what was then known as Bishop's Lynn, but is now a place called King's Lynn in Norfolk, in England. She was the daughter of a successful and influential merchant, and she kind of confesses what that really means. And for something that's kind of 1400 or 1395 or something, it's kind of mind-blowing in a way. So I did get this out of the library and had a look at it, and that's why I bought it. I got to own one of these. So I'm looking forward to reading that. I mean, I read some of it already. Yeah. And the last book, which I got from David Novak, is The Uses and Abuses of History by M.I. Finley. So, yeah, this is a tie-in with one of my with a very recent 2 videos ago about how not to get ripped off online. So, for example, you may be able to see somewhere there. I wrote in, as I do with all my books, if you refer back to my shelf respect tag, the cost and when I purchased it. And it's funny that most people in that thing, most people don't actually write how much they paid for a book, like a second-hand book. And I do on absolutely everything, And it's kind of, maybe the reason is, I look through books and I kind of look at my thing, oh, I paid £6 for that. £7 for that one. What was I thinking? These were 50p, and the James Bond was £1, and a few. That's more like it, kind of thing. It's no good kind of looking at a series of shelves and thinking, oh dear, did I really pay all that much for all that stuff? Couldn't I have done anything better with my money? Yeah, rubbish. Of course not. But this one ended up being nothing, and I think I'm going to keep it. I did, like what you're supposed to do when books tend to sort of go kind of like that. Do they not? Kind of thing, more or less. So a little bit of the lightest version of sandpaper, the lightest plane of sandpaper, will take the edge off these off second-hand books and sort of, freshen them up a little bit. So I did that with this one, and yeah, there's a guy online with a like new one at £4.65. But heck, this will do for me. I don't. That'll do, kind of thing. And yeah, I started reading it last night, and it is very interesting. As per kind of a number of things from Mr. Novak, they're perhaps almost like a previous generation for some people, at least. This one was originally from 1971. It was first published in Great Britain in 1975, and was reprinted by Penguin Books in 1990, which I think is what this one is all about. But the guy on the front is an ivory head of Philip of Macedon, or Macedonia. So that's obviously Alexander the Great's dad. And I started reading it, and the first paragraph, first chapter is Myth, Memory and History. And basically page 1 talks about how, and the only reason why I'm saying this is because it's just so involved. It's just we're just diving straight into the middle of history and drawing on things from left, right, and centre. For instance, he says the fathers of history were Greeks, but of course they were. Aristotle, not Aristotle, what am I talking about? Herodotus, and then Thucydides, and so forth. Historians of antiquity are very proud of that, so much so that they prefer not to remember that some of the best minds in antiquity were not at all impressed by this achievement. History as a discipline has always been a great favourite for the coiners of bon mots. It is false, it is dangerous, it is bunk. Historians can comfortably ignore the jibes and doubts of Walpole or even Goethe. But Aristotle is another matter. Aristotle, after all, founded a number of sciences and made all the others his own in one fashion or another, except history and economics. He did not jibe at history, he rejected it, however. I'm kind of reading most of this from page 1. He talks about a famous, he quotes straight away in the second paragraph from Aristotle about history. And he says this: poetry is more philosophical and more weighty than history, for poetry speaks rather of the universal, history of the particular. Yeah. By the universal, I mean that such or such a kind of man will say or do such or such things from probability or necessity. That is the aim of poetry. Adding proper names to the characters. By the particular, I mean what Alcibiades did and what he suffered. Yeah. And so on and so forth. But literally on page 2, he says the most astonishing thing about history. Apparently Aristotle really didn't think a lot of history by the time of the 4th century, evidently. Evidence from the past as a source of paradigms is one thing. History as a systemic study, as a discipline, is another. It is not weighty enough, not philosophical enough, not even in comparison with poetry. It cannot be analyzed, reduced to principles, systematized. It tells us merely what Alcibiades did or suffered. It establishes no truths. It has no serious function. I have no idea what's going to happen thereafter, what he's going to say about what Aristotle reckons, because obviously, presumably, I'm reading a little bit about the French Revolution at the moment, and if ever there's some universals in history, then there's some universals we found in the French Revolution. Now, nothing in any way whatsoever to do with the particular at all. So, on that score, at the very first glance at it, I'm a mega skeptic about Aristotle and Aristotle's reckoning of history. Forgive me if for any full-on Aristotle fans out there. I have actually read some of his Nicomachean Ethics, and it is dead good stuff. But I think he's pretty well dead wrong about what he says about history, or rather, he's dead wrong if he was alive now. And perhaps he's not overly wrong, being knocking around in the 4th century. So I think that's a fairly easy piece of forgiveness from our point of view towards the old guy, Aristotle. But anyway, there it is. Definitely, there's all sorts of stuff happening in this one. So my temptation is that I feel as if I need to read Thucydides, which I do have a copy of, but I kind of feel as if I need to read him first before I kind of have a whack at this, because I'm just seeing Thucydides occasionally, every now and again. So I think that will make this a bit more meaningful. But anyway, for 0.0 pence, one cannot go wrong. So good luck with buying and reading. And, well, we're nearly the end of Q4 of Historathon 2025. So plans are evidently in the minds of persons, near and far. So please like and subscribe, and comment about anything of interest. And, bye for now.